Hey everyone, this is David, aka Coma 2000. Welcome back to my channel. I'm here with episode 5 of my favorite modules series, and this time we are going to cover LFOs or low frequency oscillators, and I'm going to improvise this video because this shouldn't be too difficult, as we've already seen voltage controlled oscillators in episode 1, and LFOs and VCOs are not that different, as we will see. So I suggest that we jump right into the video, and first I will present the stock LFO and all its functionality and compare it with some other LFOs that I really like to use and that I actually use in my patches. So let's jump into it. On the screen you can see one LFO and the scope, and now the output of the LFO is connected to this scope, which visualizes the sine wave, as we have the sine wave output connected. And this is just a visual module, so if I change the time here, nothing changes to the LFO, just the visualization. So basically, you have to imagine this as the time axis, and here the voltage is going up and down from 0 to 10 volts, as you can see, minimum 0, maximum 10. And we've seen the different waveforms when we cover the VCOs. So if I add a VCO here, actually, then you will see that the two modules look very similar. And for example, if I connect the sine wave output of the VCO to the scope, then and slow this one down to the same frequency, if we can, because this goes down to 11 hertz, that means up and down movement 11 times a second. And let's say I put this to 12, and I put this to 12, then we see that they look kind of similar, except for that this is shifted up. So while the VCO is going from 0 or -5 to +5 volts, this one is going from 0 to 10. But that's because the offset button is enabled here. So if I disable this, then as you can see, the two modules are in sync and they actually produce exactly the same waveform. And now, as we've seen in my 90-minute beginner tutorial, let me add a scope. I meant a mixer. And my favorite mixer is the MixMaster and MixMasterJr from MindMeld. And then we need the audio module so that we can actually get some sound from this. And I connect the output of the mixer to the inputs on the audio module. I select my audio device, my audio interface, but you can also select built-in output. Doesn't make much of a difference. And now if I connect the VCO, which is the main sound generating module of most synthesizers, as I've explained, and turn down the volume a little bit here, and here, and here, because we never know how loud it's going to be. And I connect it. And I turn this up. For some reason, I'm not hearing anything. Oh yes, I know why not. I'm actually hearing something, and that's because we are at 12 hertz, and not every headphone is able to reproduce that. But if I turn up the frequency, and you can definitely now hear this rumble. And now, check this out. If I connect the LFO and I turn it up, like this is a very low frequency oscillator, because as you can see, it can go down to 0.0039 hertz. If I turn this up, then you start hearing a similar rumble. If we put them to the same frequency, so let's say 40 hertz, and this one to 40 hertz, or actually let's go 80, and let's go 80 hertz here. Then even though the sound might be slightly different, as I can hear, but I don't know if you're hearing the same. Let me know. But we are at the same pitch or frequency, so. Okay. So let's see what haven't I covered here, that the what functionality of the LFO haven't we seen. Well, let me actually mute this for now and get rid of the VCO, turn down the LFO to a slower frequency. So for example, if you put it to 1 Hertz, then you can see it goes up, 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 up. So it goes like 1 full cycle per second. And of course, if you put it to 2 Hertz, you get 2 full cycles of the per second, 2 cycles per second. And this is a sine wave, as you can see. Now let's look at the triangle wave. We've seen it before, so there won't be many surprises here. It goes up and then down and up and down, but in a different shape. The sawtooth wave looks like this. It goes up and then abruptly down, up and then abruptly down. And the square wave, well, it goes up quickly, stays there at 5 volts and goes down quickly, and it is at -5 volts now. And we also have this pulse width knob. So if I turn this up from 50%, let's say to 60, let's turn it up even more, 75%, then you can see that it stays up for 75% of the time and at the bottom for 25%. And this is repeating over and over and over again. And in a moment we will see what we can use this for, but I will tell you, and you probably already know, that we most often use LFOs to modulate parameters of some other modules. And the pulse width only changes the sawtooth wave, and it makes no difference because it doesn't really make sense in case of the other waveforms. And you can also invert the signal. So it first goes down and up, but in our case, over a long time, it doesn't make much of a difference. But actually with the square wave, it does, because you are staying at the bottom for a longer time and up for a shorter time. And you can actually synchronize an LFO to a clock. And we are going to use an LFO as a clock. So let me show you some other favorite LFOs of mine. Let's select, let's get rid of this first. And let's select Low Frequency Oscillator, which is right here. And if you've seen episode 4B, it was about tides, or the tidal modulator, the second version. We have seen that when it's in the yellow mode, it is actually in cyclic mode, which is an oscillator, a low frequency oscillator. And you can set the frequency here. It's in semitones, so let's see if we can produce the same wave with this one as the stock LFO. So the first output is what we are going to use here. And, well, you have a flat line. But if you open this Atenuverter, I'm opening it slowly now so you can see what's the difference. Watch the blue lines there. Then you can see that we get a triangle wave. But you can change the wave shape here. So if I turn this and go to this setting, then we actually get a sine wave out of it. And the great thing about tides is that you can manipulate this waveform in so many different ways that you can get very interesting shapes, which we can then use to modulate different parameters of other modules. So here you can change the shape, and, well, the frequency, you can turn it down, and then it goes slowly up and down. And you also have this slope knob. So if I turn it here, then you can see it goes up and down, up and down. So we actually get a sawtooth wave, but we can also go the other way. So it goes up and then slowly down. So many different options. And also with this smoothness, you can transform it in to quite funny shapes. So like this, you see it's like up, down, and then up. So it's not so smooth anymore. That's why it's called smoothness. Makes sense. And so let's get rid of this. And as I said, we can use an LFO as a clock. So I'm going to use the square wave. And I put the pulse width back to 50%. And once you connect this to as the clock, then this is actually acting as a clock. And this knob then acts as a clock divider. So what is this clock now at? 2 Hertz. So it's like 2 spikes, so to say, per second. So if we do the maths, that's 120 per minute. So we get 120 BPM, if my maths is correct. And here you can now adjust still the frequency, but we are synchronized with the clock. And well, at some point we need some sound. So let me add some modules that generate sound. So we need, well, I'm going to use marbles. And we haven't looked at sequencers yet, but I have a video on marbles and with rings and clouds, and also I think plaits and maybe braids and clouds. So I did all sorts of variations of this just because I like marbles so much. It's a great sequencer to generate semi-random voltages for pitch information is what I use it for the most often. So we have a clock rate here, so we'll synchronize this with our clock, which is our LFO. And now, here I'm going to do this quickly. So I'm going to turn the steps up so that we get only notes from the scale that we select when we right-click. So I'm going to select the, let's say, the minor scale. And I set the loop length to 8. I turn down the spread. And yeah, the bias can stay in the middle. And I'm going to add, well, not plaits this time, but I'm going to use a palette from Atelier, which is the same module as plaits, except for some differences. For example, it's polyphonic. It has this mixed audio output. So let me show you plaits just quickly. But you probably have seen it before. I haven't covered this in the VCO tutorial in the first episode because it is not an analog VCO. Rather, it's in its physical form, it's a digital one, but you can generate a lot of different sounds with it. So it's extremely versatile. And as you can see, it has 2 outputs. But palette has not only these 2 outputs, primary and secondary, but also a mixture of those 2. Of course, you could mix these 2 together yourself, but here it's already built in. Plus, you have all these Atenuverters you can for modulation, because you can modulate almost any of these settings or any parameter on this module. So this is perfect for us when looking at LFOs. So let me zoom in a little bit, because the only drawback of this is that the text is so small that it's hard to see, but you have the pitch input here. And on marbles, if you don't know, these 3 are responsible for rhythms, and then these 3 are responsible for the pitch or voltages, and these are triggers. So I use this for the pitch information. Let's go with the X1 output and then touch it in here. Yes, let me turn down the rate a little bit. And then let's use the trigger from here. And now we connect this to our mixer. There's mix out, and this is the input on the mixer. And yeah, let's listen to this. Yes, we are very high, as you can see. And also very wide range of notes. So we're going to select the X range and put it to narrow. And also what I really like about palette is that you have this visualization of what is actually happening. So you can see that the note is going up and down. And let me turn this down an octave. And let me lock this down so we get a repeated loop. And then you can play around with the deja vu here, so it changes a little bit until you get a sound that you like. We turn up the bias to go higher pitched or down. Let's turn down the clock rate a little bit. So where is our LFO here? 2 Hertz. Let's go down to okay. And let it change a little bit so it doesn't get too boring. Let's change the sound a little bit. But I don't want to spend too much time on creating a nice melody, because that actually takes time. Let me put this back here. Okay, so now we have like children's music. And well, let's get back to the LFOs. What do we have? Tides, we have seen it. You can modulate all sorts of parameters here. And I think I've covered everything, and if I haven't, then check out video 4B, where I talk much more about tides, also in LFO mode. And now let's go back to our library and see what other low frequency oscillators we have here. And I really like the Bogaudio ones, so those are the ones that I actually use. They have the stock LFO, but I actually prefer the LLFO, the little one, because it takes up very little space and it has basically almost the same functionality as the other ones. And I also like the 8FO, which has 8 different phases. So if you take the wave, then you cut it up into 8 pieces, like one cycle of it, and then you get outputs for all 8 of those phases. And then what can we do with that? Let's see. We could modulate, for example, anything. The timbre. So if I output this here and open the Atenuverter, and you can hear the sound is already much more interesting than it was before. So we add some excitement to it, some change. And yeah, let me show you this module, the LLFO from Bogaudio. You can set the frequency here, and then you also have a slow mode. So now it goes down to 0.06 Hertz, but if you push this button, then it goes to 0.0039. So it's much slower. So if you want slow modulation, this is great. And the different waveforms are here. You have to push this button to change the waveform. But yeah, let's keep it at the sine wave. And also what I really like about this is that I will show you visually. Okay, yeah, we are very slow, so it's going up or down very slowly. Let's see, it's going up now. You can see the voltages here if you hover over the input, 4.8, 4.9, and so on. So let's speed it up a little bit. And now you can see it going down. And here you have this offset knob. So instead of offsetting it by 5 volts, you can actually control how much you want to offset it. You can see the changes as I move this. You can put it down here, and then you go from -10 to 0, and here you are from -5 to 5 volts, as you can see the green line, and you can also go from 0 to 10. And you can also hear the change in the sound, of course. And the scale is like the Atenuverter on Tides, so it controls the range of the, like instead of 0 to 10 or 10 volt range, you can go to maybe 4 volts. So you can actually fine tune and set the exact range and or scale and offset as you wish. And usually this is enough. And now let's use the 8FO, which has similar functionality, but you change the waveform here, and the offset here, and the scale here, and you have some modulation, and then you have the 8 phases. So I'll just patch this in here, turn it down. It also has a slow mode. And you can see how it is changing there. Maybe I turn it up a little bit. I turned the wrong one, sorry, I have to 8FO. But let me change the waveform. And now you can see it moving up, and then down, back down, and then up, and then slowing down, and then back down. So it's a very nice movement, in my opinion. And well, what else could we do here to make this sound a bit more interesting? Well, we can use another LFO, and I really like the Seriously Slow LFO for longer modulation. And for example, when I'm making a song that's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes long, then I usually set this one, the Seriously Slow LFO, which can go from minutes to hours to days and so on, even months. And even there is an absurd version of it that goes up to millennia, but it's funny, but not very useful. But if you have used it before, let me know if you've used this one and for what. But what we could do now is, well, we have the random sampler here. So if you want to change the notes so that it goes a little bit up and down, but over a longer period of time, then I patch in the bias input here, and maybe we want a triangle wave, and then you can reset this with this button. And here you have this circular and you can hear that as it's going up, our pitch is going up, but we still have the other little melody. Now the only problem with this is you have unipolar and bipolar mode here, and you can change the phase, so you can go forward and backward. And that's also a little trick that when I want to hear the whole song, and if it's 10 minutes, but I don't want to spend 10 minutes on it, then you can kind of fast forward and then go back if you want. So you can check the range of notes, for example, just by turning this knob here. And let's set it to, I don't know, like 4 minutes or so. The only drawback I find with this one is that it doesn't have a built-in Atenuverter. So as we've seen in the episode on CV modifiers, we can, for example, use the Befaco dual Atenuverter. And it's here it's spelled with one T, so so let me add this one. And now, before feeding it in here, because this also doesn't have a built-in Atenuverter, I go from here to here, and then we have finer control. So I'm going to open this, but not to the maximum. And now if we start this little melody, it's going up and down. And this was our clock, right? So and now I'm just playing around with the knobs, so we get something more interesting. Maybe, and we'll cover effects in a future video. Let me add a Chronoblob as a delay, just for fun, so that we get something more interesting. We're going to sync this also with our LFO, which is kind of slow at the moment. And let's patch in the left output here, the right output there, and now we go here. And let me put it into ping pong mode, turn this right. And let's divide this maybe, a right click and you go. Okay, let me turn down the feedback and the dry wet so we can hear the dry sound. And now I add some wet. And I turn up the feedback. And then I select the different modes. Let's go back to the standard one. And you can actually modulate this with an LFO, so let's do that. Let's modulate the feedback and the dry wet. So maybe we use the 8FO for that, different phases. And then we open the Atenuverter. And play around a little bit with the melody. And now you just play around with the knobs and try to find the settings that you like and make a little melody. Well, this is not a finished song yet, but it is maybe a start. So I hope you learned something from this video and see you in the next one. Peace.